Slam poetry.
He doesn't care if it's perfect.
It's time to slam now.
It's the biggest poem I've got inside of me.
She was a thief. You got
To love means to love a haunted house.
Yelling, angry.
Blood-black nothingness began to spin.
Specific point of view on
To
things.
this day, I hate pork chops.
I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
You've heard of the Sunday Scaries. Welcome to the Thursday Thrills. It's I Think Therefore I Slam. Hello everyone, my name is Andrew. I'm your host for today. You may not know this, but I've actually made the decision to bring out new episodes on a Thursday so that when we eventually go to a 4-day work week, the Thursday becomes the Friday, and this will be like the start of the weekend for you. So there you go. I'm playing a bit of 4D chess for you there. Very excited today. I've got a guest who is making waves and is fresh on the scene, and I was lucky enough to see his first ever feature set at WordCraft a couple of weeks ago, and he was generous enough to say, yep, love to come on the podcast. Nick Jenkins, how are we doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, how did it feel having your first feature just a few weeks ago?
It was amazing. Like, I was just thrilled to be a part of it. Like, Ren approached me after Slam-A-Lama Ding Dong.
Yeah.
And she just ran into me on the street, and she probably just caught me at the right time as well, because I was running back inside because I'd left my phone inside. And she invited me to be a feature, and I was just blown away. I was actually going to my night shift that night as well. I had
no
night
way.
shift. Yeah, I was working 11 till 7 a.m. So I was kind of just like all over the place because I thought I was running late to work. And she was like, oh, do you want to be a part of this feature? And I was like, yes, so keen to be a part of this. And I think I have this really bad habit of not showing that I'm keen enough. So I was really trying to make sure that I was like fully keen. I'm too scared to be over the top about stuff, but I was thrilled. Like literally at work, I think I wrote my set list for it like a month in advance. Yeah.
Was it hard to focus on your shift as well, or were you just thinking, what's happening?
I don't know, because everyone at my work that I was working with at the time, like they all knew that I had that contest. So they were all like keen to see how I went and all this stuff. And then I was like, guys, like the most amazing thing just happened. I've been invited to be like a feature at a show. And then they were like, oh, that's awesome. And I was just blown away by it. And it was an awesome experience. Loved it. Loved the atmosphere. Was really grateful that Ren wanted me to be a part of it.
Yeah. Oh, we're thrilled for you, mate. You've got a couple of pieces that you're going to do today. Did you want to talk about your first one?
Yeah, sure. So I thought I'd just start at the beginning and read the first one that I ever took seriously. I wrote this on the way home from a footy game, like going to watch the footy at the MCG. And when it's a really crowded train, I try and always talk to the people that I share the carriage with. I was talking to this guy next to me, and we're just talking about the footy and whatnot. And then the man opposite me, he involved himself in our conversation, and obviously there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like we're having a private discussion.
Yeah.
But
it's probably the most public discussion you can have,
exactly,
right in the middle.
Yeah. And so he started talking to us about the footy, and we were like, oh, were you there and stuff? But I could tell something was off. And then throughout the journey from Richmond to when I got off at Parkdale, he was kind of heavily suggesting that his mother had just passed away. Without explicitly saying it, he was saying like, I just travelled from Adelaide and this and that, and I hope there's wine waiting for me, and I hope there's a pizza waiting for me. Me and the guy next to us, we weren't like asking questions or anything, but then when I got off the train, I said to him, I was like, oh, look, I hope there's a bottle of wine and your pizza waiting for you. And then I got off the train, and then I just couldn't stop thinking about it for like days and days. And I was driving home from work one day, and I had this thing in my head, and it was like this sentence, and it was like, he's guilty of being a man, the man in front of me, but who's to call him guilty when you're a man as guilty as me? And then I was like, I just got to write something. So I wrote this poem. It's called Guilty of Being a Man. He's guilty of being a man, the man in front of me. I can tell something is wrong, and his world is not at ease. Staring blankly through the window as if he cannot see. Bringing him back into this plane, I ask him where he's been. I travelled far and saw my mother, and now I know the truth. That he's guilty of being a man, this man in front of me, and now I've learned what this must have to mean. It means the stars above do not shine as bright. Now he cannot get tucked in at the end of night. That anywhere he goes, he's always in her sight. This poor fellow has lost the very thing that gave him life. I wish to speak some more, tell him everything's okay, But I try to say some words and there's nothing left to say. But he's guilty of being a man, this man in front of me. But who's to call him guilty when you're a man as guilty as me? But what did I do wrong? I spoke to him, I talked to him, that was my job. But how is that enough when I watch this poor gentleman sob? I should have asked more questions. I wish I asked about his mother. How when she was around there never was a bother. Holding back his tears in his cage as if they were a robber. Instead I look and say, but who is the guilty man? It cannot be the one in front of me. All of us are guilty, just hardly as guilty as me. Yeah.
Loved it, Nick. Appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that you were in. We talk about being on the train and everyone's on their phone or their book and whatever. That's part and parcel. Some people are sharing their music a little bit too generously, maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
But, you had the awareness to look out for other people and to have that awareness of their story.
Yeah. But, like I guess as I say in the poem, I was just frustrated with myself. But the poem's like about being frustrated with myself, but I'm also still frustrated at him because he could have been like, oh, yeah, my mother just passed. Like, I'm not actually doing okay. Obviously, it's so hard to be completely vulnerable with a complete stranger. That's such a foreign thing. But I know that I'm comfortable enough to ask that as well. But because I didn't get just as much of the information I needed, I was like too hesitant to be like, hey, are you okay? So I wrote that poem about that, just like being vulnerable as a bloke, particularly in a public setting, like just so foreign, especially being surrounded by older blokes as well, like coming straight from the footy, you know. So, yeah.
So when you say you felt annoyed at yourself or felt guilt or whatever, is it because you feel like you wanted to like ask the explicit question, but
for
it just
sure,
didn't happen?
Yeah. Like I fell into this hole that I try not to be a part of, where it's like I can be completely vulnerable with anyone, no matter the circumstance, and I hope that people can do the same to me. And I could tell something was wrong, and I don't know. I remember this thing in my head that I can't get out of. It was a rainy night and he was like playing with the fog on the window, and it was like a childlike action, and like he was talking and stuff, and that was when I looked at him and I should have just been like, are you doing all right, mate? It seems like something's wrong. And that's when I said that he was heavily suggesting, he's like, I just came back from Adelaide. I went and saw my mum. And he didn't elaborate on that. But then when he brings up his mum again, but he brings her up in past tense, and then he starts talking about this bottle of wine that he wants.
I guess we don't know what happened after that interaction, but hopefully it was something positive. Hopefully, I don't know, hopefully it's something that he remembered. Someone who was kind on a train, sometimes that's all you can do.
Yeah, like I did say to him, he was saying how he wants this bottle of wine and he hopes his pizza's waiting for him. So when I got off the train, I said to him, I was like, look, I hope that bottle of wine's ready and your pizza's still warm. And I don't know what he thought of that comment, but hopefully that comment was enough to just acknowledge.
An acknowledgement of, even though maybe we had a conversation where we didn't quite touch on what was really going on, there was maybe some understanding there or whatever.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. But yeah, that's the first piece I ever wrote.
Great way to start.
Yeah, first serious piece. Like I'd been writing ones as jokes here and there to like my friends, like before a footy game and stuff. Like I'd joke that he'd done too much ketamine the night before to perform all right at footy. Yeah. And I'd send it to him as a poem and I'd be like, oh, get ready for tomorrow, mate. But yeah, that was the first serious one. And I didn't really have anywhere to put it, because all the ones I'd sent to my friends and such, they were all like the joke ones, making fun of one of the people in my friend group or this and that, or just a silly topic. So I just decided to put it on TikTok because like I had nowhere else to put it. But then people left really nice comments. And I was like, wow, I wasn't really expecting this. And then that kind of just compelled me to write more serious ones, or just more, I guess serious can be a heavy word as well, but more ones that aren't about ketamine and playing football.
Yeah, you kind of, I mean, like the piece you just shared was like a really heartfelt, dramatic but like heartfelt piece. So it's always funny in slam just how wide the spectrum can be. I think I talked with John last episode about how maybe the cliche is that slam has to sound particularly charged or passionate or political or what have you, but it can be anything really. So is that how you got started? You were mucking around, sharing it within friend groups or whatever, and then just for a laugh, put it a bit wider and got good feedback? Is that how this developed for you?
Pretty much. Like it's a combination of that, like a combination of writing like joke ones and sending them to my friends. But also I studied film at university, and like, I've always loved creative writing, like coming up with short film ideas and just creating worlds and environments. And I still am writing a script for a film idea of mine, but I haven't touched it in so long. Okay. And I could call it writer's block all I want, but that's not the case because I've got the story fleshed out. But it's about making every little bit interesting. I guess it is writer's block in a way then. And so I started writing poetry to combat writer's block.
Interesting.
So I looked at a poem and I was like, oh, you know what? It's like a mini story. Like I'm telling a mini story. And you'll notice that the way I structure my poems, like I have something that I fall back on every time. Like in the one I just read, like the Guilty of Being a Man, like it reoccurs at several points. And that's how I can tell you where it starts, the middle, and it finishes.
It's almost like a chorus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you get lost in my words for whatever reason, and then I come back to this part, you know that the story's shifted whether you've followed or not. So yeah. Yeah, so I was doing that, and then I was also lifeguarding as well, and I just started doing the joke poetry stuff, and you're not allowed to use the radios for fun, God forbid, but there was one pool that you would be on, and you would call out when it was time to swap pools to make it interesting. So what I would do in between getting on that radio and calling rotation would be to come up with a poem about rotating. And I couldn't give you one off the top of my head, but I'd be so excited. I'd be thrilled. I've been thinking about it for like the past hour, coming up with it in my head. And I remember one, it was something silly. It was like, I looked down at my device of flotation, wishing I could be at home playing on PlayStation. And looking at the clock and seeing that it's time for a rotation or something like that. Yeah, and then you look around the rest of the pool and you see a few smiles and stuff. And but yeah, definitely just started off as a joke, like nothing serious. But I guess all things do in some way, you know, it's just it's just for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool that you were able to be playful in that context. I was going to ask you whether it was like a beach or a pool.
It was a pool. Yeah. So just something to keep it interesting. Or like on a hot weather day, someone would come around and deliver icy poles. So I'd jump on the radio and ask for an icy pole, but I'd give them a poem for it as a payment on behalf of everyone or something.
We're creating a brand new economy. You know, paying people in limericks or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I love that because that's a lot of power as well. It reminds me of like being given the announcer mic at like sports day in high school one time, and I was like, I can play all the music that I want, and this kind of thing. And I don't know who gave me that power, but it can backfire if you're not careful. Cool. And then, how did you start like going to gigs and doing open mics?
I'd been writing for about 5-6 months, and in that time, I actually snapped my leg. Long story short, it's not an interesting story, but it put me out of action for a while, but it gave me plenty of time to write.
Yeah.
And during that time, like I posted a lot of my poems on TikTok and people say really nice things. Then I'd have a situation where I was with like some friends that are very creative themselves, and one of them would read it out. And I remember asking, I was in the car with a few of them, and I said to him, I was like, do you want to read this out? And he hadn't read it before. And he read it out. But he enjoyed it while he read it out because it's obviously refreshing for him. Like all of it's new, and like, he doesn't know what comes next or anything. Yeah. And it was awesome seeing that. But then I was also like in my head, I was like, I actually remember saying to him, I was like, do you want me to read it out how I wrote it? And they're like, yeah, read it out. Because it was one about like, a relationship, and like the second half of the poem plays out like an argument. Oh. So I was like getting all passionate, and they were like, that's awesome. So then I remember I went home and I'd started recording some on my phone, and then I would put them on TikTok too. Obviously, first time you listen back to your voice, as we were saying earlier, it's not the most pleasant thing. So I wasn't too big on it, and they didn't perform very well. Not that I care how well they perform, but they take a bit more effort than just posting a bunch of photos. But then I was like, I'd just gotten back from an overseas trip in Japan where I'd done plenty of writing there as well. And I was like, I got to see if there's like a place to read these things, because I hadn't actually looked at all. Like I'm so behind on all this stuff. Like even how I found out about Slam-A-Lamma Ding Dong was through Jude as well. I just saw his Instagram. I was like, bro, where is this place?
Yeah.
And he goes, how do you not know this? I was like, oh, I don't know. I saw Clay Pots, and Clay Pots is like the closest one in St Kilda. Shout out to Clay Pots.
Yeah.
So I went there for the first time, and I didn't really know what to expect. I sat at the back, and I was like, I got a meal, so it didn't look like I was just there for the poetry. Yeah, right. Yeah. Because I just went by myself. I didn't tell anyone. Not that I didn't want to tell anyone. I just wanted to experience something for myself and not have people get excited or be proud about it in this way. But then when I told them, they were like, oh, why didn't you tell me? Like, a few of my friends actually found out that I was performing at Clay Pots that night, and they're like, dude, what the hell, we're coming. So they came.
Invite.
Yeah, literally, yeah. And they ended up coming, which I thought was sweet as of them. They didn't have to do that. And then, yes, I performed there a few times, and then I performed at Radio Talk a few times, and then I performed at Slam Lama Ding Dong. I always get them mixed up. And I didn't care whether or not I won. I just wanted to read my 3 pieces, which I did. I got to read all 3 of them. And that was an awesome experience as well. And it was something different. It has a competitive aspect to it. But yeah, when I was at Radio Talk for the first time, I think that was probably the only second or third time I had read my poems out loud. And I was sitting there, and I can't remember where I was in the queue, like on this list to speak, but I remember like listening to some of these people talk, and they were talking about like really serious, like full-on personal topics. And I was blown away, like that people feel comfortable talking about those kind of things, those kind of topics in a room full of what would mostly be strangers almost. But on top of that, and then I also felt a bit sad for them, because I was like, oh, maybe these people don't have a strong enough social circle or friends and family around them where they can go to them about these things. They have to rely on sharing it with a room full of strangers, because it's obviously a very welcoming environment. Like, you can do no wrongs in these kind of environments, and like people approach you after you perform and they'll say things about your poetry. So it's probably a comforting thing for them to be able to talk about these topics and then get approached afterwards and talk about it and be vulnerable with another stranger. But I just remember sitting there thinking, I was like, this is full on. So I was like, I had my 3 poems that I was going to say, and I was like, nah, stuff that. And I swapped, and I was like, I'm going to talk about something uplifting. One was about following your dreams, and then the other one was a bit more serious, but it was about mental health, but it was like an outside point of view of it.
Yeah.
And then the last one was about being grateful to wake up in the morning. And then, yeah, I think that day forth, I was like, I think I'm just going to stick to writing uplifting stuff more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good on you. And was that the night that you were scouted by Ren, our friend?
No, that was the night I got scouted by Jude, though.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay,
Jude came up to me, and he was like, those were amazing. He's lovely. He's so lovely. And yeah, it was lovely meeting him. No, I got scouted by Ren after Slam-a-Lama Ding Dong night. Yeah. She just came straight up to me. And yeah, that was amazing as well. Like, she's so amazing. I think I'd seen her face at a few other events, perhaps. Wouldn't cross paths. I can usually never stick around to the end of these events just because of time restraints.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an amazing experience.
And yeah, your first feature night was at Wordcraft. It was their first night at the Victorian Pride Centre, which is their new venue. Stunning venue. Even though we were in the atrium for that night, it was still like, whoa, absolutely beautiful spot. Talk me through, what that was like for you to have a feature.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was just blown away to even get offered. And then when she told me I was going to be speaking for 20 minutes, like, I was thrilled. Like, I would be on my way to work and I'd be timing it in the car, and I'm like, oh, I'm talking too much in between. But then when I got there, I actually didn't speak long enough in between. I don't actually reckon I hit the 20-minute in the end.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't script anything I was going to talk out in between. I just had a general idea. Then I get up and I'll stutter a few words, and I'm like, all right, next poem.
Yeah.
But no, it was amazing, and I was thrilled. She said if the dates didn't work, she'd organise another day, and I was like, no way. I was like, I've been given the opportunity to speak at this feature at this night at its new venue for the first time. There's no way I'd turn this down.
Yeah.
So I got out of work and everything, and yeah, it was amazing to be a part of it. I was a bit nervous because I spoke a funny one, and I'd never really spoken a funny one before, and I didn't know if it was going to be like the right crowd for it or anything, especially considering the topics I talk about.
Yeah.
Besides that, but it went really well, and it was well received, so it was all good in the end. I had a bit of a hiccup at the end on my last poem, I remember, because I kind of remember my poems like how I do them on TikTok where it's like a card, a verse. So I
yeah.
remember them each verse and I'm like thinking in my head, I was like, I got no idea.
You were
But-
trying to hold those cards in your head.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then I just fell all over the floor. But no, it was amazing. Like I was just so thrilled to be a part of it. Like I said, it was an awesome opportunity. And everyone afterwards say nice things. That's my favorite part about it. People coming up to me and just saying nice things. I think it's really compelled me to write more. Someone said to me that they think my writing is for everyone else rather than myself. And I'd never thought about that, but I really loved that they said that to me because it really made me like look back at the things I talk about and understand that. So when people come up to me and they're like, oh, I loved this. Like I've never heard something said in this way, you know, it's really lovely to hear that. I just love hearing from people afterwards. That's easily my favorite part of it.
Do you think that's true, that the stuff you're writing is for other people?
I think so, because I had a conversation with another lady at Clay Pots and I explained that with my poems, like none of them are personal. I don't think any of them are that personal, except for perhaps the ones I wrote about my family, but even still, like I write them in a way where you can relate it to your own family. Everything's for other people in that sense. Like there's nothing that I'm going to write in a poem where they go, I can't relate to that.
You're drawing people in to the story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She said, oh, you should write personal ones. And I thought, I take aspects of my own life and put them in, and I think that's enough because then other people can fill the gaps with aspects of their own lives and they're going to read it differently and they're going to understand it differently and create their own different story about what I've written, and that's what I want. That's what I'd prefer.
Yeah. And if we were talking about more traditional writing, it's absolutely fine to write fiction. Not everything needs to be memoir.
Yeah, exactly.
Not everything needs to be non-fiction or educational text. Do you know what I mean? There's all kinds of room for all kinds of genre. Congratulations again, because it was a great night. I had so much fun. I had some friends there who'd never been to a slam event before, and I just thought the vibe was spot on. I got to get up there at the open mic. I talked about the podcast a bit, and yeah, I just think it's a really fantastic like new home, and I think it's going to lead to some really cool nights and some new features and stuff like that. So,
yeah, and a great venue as well. It's in the best spot of St Kilda, arguably. There's plenty of life as soon as you go around the corner.
Yeah, some of the staff from the centre were there. They were keying people in as we went through the doors. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
It was grouse. But yeah, massive thanks to Ren for that. Just blown away that I even got offered, really.
Good. Well, it's only the start. We've got you on here, and
I know,
you just told me that you're potentially on another podcast soon. So
in September, an Instagram live one. So you'll have to keep your eye out for that as well.
Brilliant. You enjoying the process?
Oh yeah, I love it all. It's all very new and it's all very foreign to me, which is like, it's interesting. Like even for example, when the first time I sat down at Radio Bar for it, I remember I was like sitting down and people are clicking in between talking. I was like, what the hell is going on? I was like, what is this clicking stuff? And I remember I like had to ask, and I was there by myself in my full work outfit. Like I look like I've just come off my shift or whatever. And I was like, what's like, why are people clicking? What's the clicking for? And they were like, oh, you click when you hear something you like. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, now I know that. But yeah, it's all very foreign. It's all very new. People telling me to pursue, or like they're suggesting I should do this and that. And I'm thrilled because it's stuff I've never considered before. If you asked me a year ago, like literally a year ago, if this is what I was going to be doing in the matter of months, I'd be laughing at you. I'd be like, what do you mean? I would just joke while walking around a pool.
Funny how what can lead to what. And I think on the click, it's a clap you can do one-handed. You're not doing this. You're doing
true.
This
that is
instead.
true.
So maybe that's why. Maybe that's why it happened, because it's, I don't know.
Yeah,
just
beer in
easier.
one hand, clicks in the
that's
other.
it. We're in so many bars and other places of entertainment around the city that it simplifies it a lot. Oh, that's good. Earlier on, Nick, you said that you play footy and everything like
that's
that.
right.
I think one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is because we're just getting to know each other. But do you surf at all?
Oh, I'd like to claim I do, but I'm not the best at it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do have a board and such.
Yeah.
I was out recently with some mates. If you ask me how many waves I caught, I couldn't tell you. But if you ask me how many I ate, I could tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just was underwater most of the time.
Oh, that's good. But you're clearly someone who is interested in some of these conversations that are happening around like masculinity in culture, for example. I think that's happening a lot. So you love your footy, you can footy culture, because I haven't had someone on who's in footy culture. So how do you find balancing like being a creative and like liking what you like with the other cultures that you're in?
Well, it's funny you say that because I've never been a reserved person. Like I always am very comfortable just putting all my cards on the table. And if someone's going to make fun of that or scoff at it or whatever, like they can do that. It speaks more about them than it does me. But I've seriously had like only but nice things said. And it's a surprise as well to me. I missed one of my footy games to perform at WordCraft, and like I told them that I was like, guys, I've got this poetry gig. All of the things that people said in my team were just like really nice things. They were like, oh man, smash it. I hope you do well. One of them even reached out and he's like, dude, would you feel comfortable reading one before a game maybe? Which I haven't done yet. But I was like, I know he said that to me, and I was like, dude, like, isn't that such a sweet thing to ask? And the same goes into my work life as well, because I work in the construction industry. So I guess you'd throw it in the same masculine mindset of footy as well. But same again, like I've had nothing but good things. I think you expect the worst. It's just a human condition to expect the worst. I've had only but nice things. Even I told the people that I'm working with at the moment, like on Friday, that I had this for the weekend. And they're like, oh, that's awesome, man. That's awesome stuff. And it's really refreshing thing as well, especially when you're not expecting the worst, but you're certainly not expecting the best.
Yeah, especially when you're trying something new. And that's so good to hear that it's been so well received and whatever. Do you have like a team song at footy? Because maybe you need like a team slam. I don't know.
It's funny you say that because like, there is the team song. And when someone said to me, they call me Jerker. That's my footy nickname. Oh, Jerker, why don't you read us a poem? And then I was like, I don't really have anything appropriate to rile up a team before we start. But I started writing one so that it could be said before a game, get like people ready to clash heads and stuff.
That's it.
But yeah.
Oh, it's a work in progress. I'll look forward to when it's finished. Oh, that's good, mate. It's really good to hear that. Yeah, something that you didn't anticipate getting involved in has had so many like positive ripples throughout your world and stuff like that. It's
in
so
such a short amount of time as well. It's just, it's really taken over. If someone was to speak about me to someone they'd never met and be like, oh yeah, this is Nick. He works as a lifeguard or he works in construction. Like that's what they say. But now it's, he does poetry. Yeah. Oh, he really enjoys writing poetry, which is cool as well. That's the title that's attached to my name now.
Love it. Yeah, it's just another thing, just another aspect of who Nick Jenkins is, I guess.
Yeah.
Tell me about studying film. I'm interested in this.
Oh, yeah. So I've always loved film. I've known from the start that's the pathway I want to go down. Like when it comes to working in the film industry, it's like, even at uni, it's like a super, super competitive, my idea's best. Like people don't even want to listen what you've got to say because like they're convinced they've got the best idea, you know. Literally my first day of my second year, I copped a lecture from another student about filming on my iPhone. He's like, why don't you just go out and film on your phone? And I was like, mate, do you go out and film on your phone? It's a bit strange, but I had my group of friends there and we were in a group together throughout the whole year. So that was good, all like-minded. But it was really interesting that year because we all got to do a short film. And I thought it was interesting because all of us did a very personal short film. And it was really awesome to be a part of it all. Like one of my mates, was about like gangs and cars. He used cars and he's like, well, how do I make cars interesting? Like make gangs involved. So it was about like, it was like a crime one and he used like old cars and stuff for it. And that was awesome to be a part of. And then someone's idea was about like missing your morning coffee and then the rest of their day is ruined. And then another one was like struggling with self-identity. And then I wrote one about, and it's actually funny you asked that because that first poem I wrote, Guilty of Being a Man, it's something I took parts of from the short film that I made, and it's called The Pieces That Make a Man. And it's meant to be about a man and he's got his two kids, but he's a bad father. And the only reason he's a bad father is because he's still a kid himself. Like, he never really grew up, and not that's a problem, but it's prevented him from being a father. Like instead of having two little kids running around the house, it's three little kids running around the house and he's the third. But yeah, so I wrote that one and I was really happy with that. I've got a few short films that I've been writing and then I've got a feature film that I've been writing. And I hope that the stars align with that as well. Yeah. But yeah, to me, the title is like always the most important thing. Okay. And that goes into the same with like my poetry as well, even though you're going to look at it once. I just love having an interesting title for a story. So the one that I'm writing at the moment, the feature one, it's actually a zombie one, and it's called The Last Autumn Before Forever.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but that was the one that I've just struggled with, and then poetry has since taken over. In fact, I actually write all the poems on the script writing app. So if you go up the top, it's got like 15, 20 pages of the zombie script, and then since there's like 64 pages of poetry underneath.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Is it like a zombie apocalypse or whatever in like an Australian context? Because that'd be something different.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Nice.
Yeah. Like I wanted it to be in like the Mansfield area.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I wanted to have it in like a ski resort kind of location. It's really not even about zombies. It's meant to be about two brothers, but I think like all interesting films come from having a very simple topic, and then you can create something around it that's interesting and engaging.
Or when George Romero was doing the original kind of zombie film, it was about Cold War anxieties and the communists next door or this kind of thing.
Yeah.
What are some of the films that have inspired you? Like, do you have a set of favorites?
Oh, for sure. In fact, a lot of films inspire my poetry and also music as well. Music and everything besides other... Oh, actually, that's a lie. I won't say that. But the biggest inspirations come from other films and music as well. They inspire everything. I'll hear a line of dialogue in a film and I'm like, oh my God. I watched a movie called, I don't know if you've seen it, Past Lives. It was up for an Oscar last year.
How did I know you were going to say that?
Really?
That's super interesting. I haven't seen it myself, but it's on my list.
Interesting, yeah. Well, it's a good film, but there's a line of dialogue in it, and there are without spoiling it for you because it's on your list, but this one lady, she's from a very successful family in Korea. They're actually famous directors and all this stuff. And someone says to them, why are you moving overseas? You've got everything you want here. And she says in return, she's like, oh, when you leave something behind, you gain something too. And I was like, whoa. And I remember, and my mate was going through a heartbreak at the time. I just sat down and I wrote him this poem in the space of like 15 minutes. I just wrote him this poem and I sent it to him. And I was like, mate, here you go. And then I was also like, hey, can I post this on TikTok? I always got to ask when I write something for someone else if they want me to, because it's personal for them, but it's still relatable for others.
Yeah, I like that. So are you more of like a dialogue guy or cinematography in terms of this?
Oh, in terms of film, man, it's definitely a combination.
Yeah.
Like interesting dialogue. If you look at any Tarantino film, I think he's really good at dialogue, but I also think he struggles on story aspects. So he relies on having interesting dialogue, and that's cool. But then if you want a compelling story, sometimes that's not the way. Like interesting shots and unique camera movements and all that definitely take the cake for me, probably. I have a list of scenes that are like my favorite scenes. Like they're not even good movies, some of them, but like favorite scenes.
Oh, yeah.
And I've broken them down. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd be surprised that something can become iconic while everything else around it kind of
for
fades to
sure.
obscurity.
That's such a good point. Yeah. And I think one of the examples, and I was thinking of it because even though I was not even born, I think, when this movie was released, but I'm very understanding of that it wasn't well received and it didn't do well at the box office. But The Iron Giant, it's one of my favorite films. And I think what you said, where it's like something becomes iconic, there's like a scene where he's touching a deer. And like, I'll always have that image in my head, whether that's Universal or not. You could say, hey, I'm walking here's Universal. You know, a lot of people won't even know what movie that's from, but like they know that scene or they know that dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. I watched a really old film, Rebecca, by Hitchcock recently, which I've never seen. And it was so unusual because it's almost 100 years old now.
Yeah.
And to see how different filmmaking was then in terms of, firstly, it's not in colour, so that whole aspect of what we're used to in film is not there at all. And also, like, the musical score goes throughout the whole film. There's almost like no silence or anything. And yeah, it's definitely come a long way. Do you reckon the film industry is kind of in a weird spot right now? We hear a lot about like, the mid-tier project isn't really being funded, and risk-taking is probably at an all-time low. It's franchises.
Sure.
And you've got small indies as well, but there's almost no middle ground. Is that what you kind of
For sure.
see?
And I think that like if you look at an A24 film, that's like where the direction it's going now. If you want to do something obscure, if you've got something interesting to tell, it's going to be done by A24.
Yeah,
and
they
I
found
think,
a niche.
And I think everyone is slowly jumping on that wave of understanding that, like, oh, if it's A24, it's going to be interesting and unique. They're yet to disappoint me as well. Like, they're always putting out very interesting films.
Which I think is unusual for a film production studio. Like, in my mind,
sure.
I almost attach director or maybe star to seal of quality.
Yeah.
But for a production house to have gone through that and to be seen with so much prestige.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like really rare. So good on them.
Especially when you look at how diverse the films are.
Yeah.
Like, some of them are so obscure. And then, like, some of them are pretty straightforward. But if you were to be like, oh, you got to check out A24, and then you give them a movie like The Killing of the Sacred Deer, and they come back to you and you're like, mate, what the hell did I watch? Or you give them something recent. I'm not sure. There was the one that was just in cinemas. Oh, I think it was called Civil War.
Oh, yes, that was them, wasn't it? Yeah.
And then, but if you gave them something like Civil War, they're probably like, that's more
mainstream.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, mainstream.
It's a little bit more mainstream and, I don't know, maybe timely, but
yeah.
It was interesting to see the discourse around that and for it to be seen as, we're going to release this and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
On a local level, do you feel you have a good read on what the Australian film industry needs? Does it just come down to like more support?
Honestly, I wish I could tell you, because it's like, even when I was at uni and stuff, it's like I look at the Australian film industry and I was like, I almost, even though I've played such little parts in it, it's like, it's too small for me almost. Like, I look at it and it feels very exclusive. Like, when you look at it, it feels exclusive. But honestly, I think it's doing fine. I think it's harder nowadays when it's like all streaming platforms and all that. You're not openly looking for Australian content.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be wanting to go and see it yourself. Yeah. Like, no one's going to be like, oh, let's just go on the TV real quick and see if there's something to watch. Yeah. It's local.
It's a lot of risk aversion.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's not to say that there aren't great stories. We've just seen Boy Swallows Universe start as a very Australian book and then being turned to a very Australian series that's had some success. That's awesome. You'd love to see more of that. And even like ABC is doing great little niche things in terms of some of their documentaries. We talk about the old people's home for 5-year-olds or Love on the Spectrum or things like that. Ideas that can be replicated and taken global.
For sure. And they had that other one. I don't think they do it anymore. Like the You Can't Ask That. That was great. Yep. And I one thing that I always thought Australian did really well is their government funded ads. I'm always like, whoa, because like they're always great. Like, I love the one where they always play it like at the end of every year, the one about like the police are throwing a party. Like, that one's grouse. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And at the moment with your course, you're kind of on a break?
Yeah, I deferred at the end of 2022 and I'd hoped to already be starting it up again, but because I broke my leg and stuff, like... And I'd taken that year off to earn money. I was like, no, I'm not going back yet. So I think mid next year or towards the end of next year is when I'll jump back into it.
Love that.
Yeah.
And I guess when you do become charge of on set or whatever, I know people say break a leg as good luck, and maybe we'll ban that one. Maybe we'll find
ban
something
that
else.
One, yeah.
Oh, that's good, Nick. I really enjoyed hearing about that. I think it's time for another slam piece.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, this next one I wrote it for my brother, and I've written for one for everyone in my family, but my mum doesn't really have one that follows this writing style, I guess. But I have written ones for her just so she knows she's not excluded. Yeah, but this one is the one I wrote for my brother and I love it. There's no real backstory to it, although it was inspired by something from a TV series called Godless. I don't know if you've seen it.
It's like a Western, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. But there's like a character in it and he gets told he lost his shadow, but his is a self-identity thing, like he's a man with no shadow. But I was thinking about that and then I thought about my brother because I was like, my brother's like my shadow. When he was younger and stuff, there wasn't anything that I would do that didn't involve him following me behind. Yeah. I wrote this one and it's called My Little Shadow and it's about my brother. They say a boy with no shadow never looks for the sun. I was born walking, they say, with a million destinations in mind, wandering every day, looking for new things to find. creating my own track, not realizing that I was leaving an impact. A man told me, be careful, my son, leaving a trace allows people to follow. But what's wrong with that, I wondered. Look at all this space. Walking many directions as I awaited the challenge of tomorrow. Always moving forward on my own path. But what's this I hear? Another voice trailing as I embark. Now I've realised that it doesn't matter what road you take, rather the company that are true and don't point out mistakes. So I ask the universe for the greatest company of all. They say a boy with no shadow never looks for the sun. Instead, I feel shallow and in need of someone. So I asked for a star, yet was given the sun. And that cast a shadow, now I'm followed by one. We walk this path together. We may go our separate ways, but if we ever lose each other to the moon, I'd search for you right away. I'll walk with my back to the sun and wait for my shadow, my brother. They say a boy with no shadow never looks for the sun, but if I didn't have a shadow, then I'd be no one.
Amazing. This is, you said you wrote this for your younger brother?
Yeah, my younger brother, yeah.
Wow. What was that like being able to, I don't know, gift someone something so personal?
Well, he was the first person I think I'd written a poem for, properly at least, like a serious one. But he loved it. I wish I read it to him because I've read it to everyone else since. But I sent it to him. I think he might have been overseas even when I sent it to him. He sent me a lovely text message. He's like, I'll always be your shadow and stuff. And I loved that. I think when I saw that message, I straight away realized that that's the kind of reason why I write. To hear stuff like that, that's the reason I write. To know that your work is appreciated by other people.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. So creativity as a whole, let's open up the barn doors and chat about it. Have you found any kind of tools or tips or tricks that help you create and workshop different ideas? You've mentioned, the soup of pop culture that a lot of us, I know I have running around in my head, 100%. Making connections between music and film and different things I see. What's it like for you?
No, definitely similar. Once I really fall in love with something, I might not have even written it yet, but like music in particular, if I stumble across a song and I'll listen to just the instrumental, like without the lyrics, or I'll just stumble upon like an ambient noise kind of song, and I'll listen to that for like dead set a week straight, and I might not even write during that week, but I know that it's going to have a poem attached to it. So I'll just listen to it over and over again, and I write in all places. Like I'll have it on repeat at the gym while writing a poem. And I always think about those videos where people come up and they're like, oh, what song are you listening to? And I was like, I hope no one would come up to me in the gym and ask what I'm listening to right now. I'm listening to like clouds passing by while writing a poem. And I'll listen to it for like a week straight while I write. And I draw like little covers for the poems as well to put on TikTok. Yeah, so I'll be drawing while I listen to it as well. It plays a big influence in it. And I think it also helps me set the tempo of my poem, like how it's going to read when it plays out.
Yeah.
And it's funny with the music as well because some of them I haven't realized until afterwards, but they already relate to the poem, which is like bizarre. It blows me away. Like I wrote one about like that when I died, like I wanted my body to be like thrown out to sea. And the song I attached to it was called like The River's End, and the river's end can be the sea. And I was like, oh, what the hell? Yeah. And then I wrote this, like the one that I wrote about mental health. Like I talk from the point of view of like mental health being like a tree. And the song that I had written towards that is called Lung. And I thought that was interesting because like trees breathe as well. Music, big one. And then, yeah, like you said, pop culture as well. But usually when it's like films or other things that I hear from people, it's instant. I'm jotting that down straight away. Whereas like music, I'll just like sit on it. I'll just listen to it all parts of the day. Like I'll be driving to work. I'll just put it on for an hour straight. I might not even think of anything to do with that poem. But when I do, I try and go on a roll. Yeah.
Wow. So you're a fan of the older Viking funeral, I suppose you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, for sure.
There's great poetry in that, I think, as well, where they would essentially give the body up to the earth, I suppose, just in a different way, in the same way that you might bury in the ground. And then I think I don't know if this is just something from TV, but set it alight with a
bow and
with an arrow or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Like, it's a great striking visual as well.
For sure. No, I kind of wrote that one with this thing in mind that my sister had told me, and I actually didn't know it myself, loving animals so much, but she said, like, salmon go back to the place they were born in to die. They'll go back to the same river they were born in just to die there. And I thought it was interesting because I was like thinking about it in terms of humans. I was like, I was born in a hospital, and I was like, I think the last thing I'd want to do is pass in a hospital. But we'd be, a lot of us would be like salmon in that sense. Like, it could be the last place. And then I thought, stuff that. Throw me in the water.
Spend all our life swimming upstream.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. We could extend this like
Exactly,
as much as we
yeah.
want. Do you play music yourself as well?
Oh, no, I wish.
Yeah.
I'm not talented enough. But you know what? It might take away from the writing, because I have spoken to musicians before where they notice all the notes and like they read out the notes in their head. So I can't imagine it would be very pleasant to be trying to write a poetry song while listening to this 8-minute ambient song. And I'm like, oh my God, G sharp. So yeah. But no, I don't. I tried to learn the piano once. It didn't last very long. I'm not talented enough, but it would have been cool. I blame my parents for it. They should have put me on the piano at 3 or something.
Savant.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like when you have the creative flow in you, like it's going to come out somewhere. So obviously some people have all kinds of different disciplines, music, songwriting, filmmaking, whatever, where it'll come out. It's absolutely fine to be like, hey, here's my one thing or here's my two things, and that's where my energies are going to go, because I can imagine I would never finish anything if I had all these things.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think there's beauty in that as well, like wanting to try everything, like never being particularly good at something, but just like trying everything. I think that's living life to the extent you're meant to as well. You could be talentless at so many things, but still enjoy doing it.
And that's what led you here, trying something.
Sure, yeah.
So you just never know. And I wanted to ask you as well, like, how has it felt to, I don't know, just come across the community and other people who also do the same thing?
Oh, it's so fascinating. It's so interesting. Like, it's such a different group of people that I'm used to being around. Like, in a good way. Like, everyone, they're all these creative people and they've all got their own unique stories to tell. And some people come up with remarkable metaphors for in their writing, where you just sit there and you're like, wow. Like, I remember one lady from the radio talk night, and her metaphor that she used was like about being a tadpole and then growing out of the pond, but wishing to go back to being a tadpole. And I was like, wow, like that was such an amazing metaphor that she'd used. And I still think about it, I'm like, wow, that was bloody brilliant. I love it. It's a different community and it's very interesting to be a part of as well. And someone said it to me that I thought it was pretty interesting way. So I spoke to a comedian at a Clay Pots night, and he just went up because he likes to rap as well. So he read out some of his raps, and I was explaining to him that I had this like funny poem, and I was like, oh, I was going to go to a night and trial it. I was actually going to trial it tonight, and I didn't end up trialing it, the funny one. And he goes, nah, man, stop it. He goes, go all out. He goes, this is a feature night. He's like, people have paid and they're there to listen. You go to these other nights, like even tonight, and a lot of people just wait their turn to speak. And they aren't actually that attentive because they're just waiting their turn to speak. But at this night, this is the night where you should just trial everything. There are no wrongs. And I was like, oh, man, it's a very unique way to look at it. But I guess coming from his comedy experience, it would be the same with a comedy open mic night.
I think comedy takes so much guts to just
Doesn't it?
trial and workshop stuff. I have a lot of admiration for people who are doing that. For me, yeah, that's like other people who might look at slam and go, oh, that's intense. But I guess I look at stand-up comedy and go, that's next level.
100%, 100%.
How do you go when you hit kind of creative blocks? We talk a lot on here about perfectionism, about feeling cringe about your own work. Are these things that happen to you a bit or not so much?
Honestly, not particularly. Like when I come across like a block or something, like even recently before I had finished the one that I only finished 2 to 3 days ago, I was like, man, I haven't written one in ages. But I'm just a big believer in just write when it comes to you. Like if you have to force it out, like it isn't genuine. If you're forcing yourself to write, like you aren't writing what you want. You're just writing for the sake of like being stressed out about yourself almost. So I literally just write when it comes to me. I don't force anything. Like whether that means I write 4 poems in a week or 1 poem in a month. Like, I don't push myself for it. Like, I want every piece to just be as an enjoyable read as the last. You know, I don't get caught up because all my poetry is rhyming, so I don't get caught up if I've used rhymes before. I'm like, oh my God, because really, who's the only person that's going to know that? Me. I think the only time I've really cringed at myself was like when I first did the voice recording ones.
Yeah.
I was like, yuck. I was like, nah. And I remember I posted on TikTok, I was like, if I say one bad comment, I'm deleting the post straight away.
We're done.
And it, you know, of course, like my mates are just like teasing me about it. And I was like, but I was deleting their comments because I was like, no, they're going to encourage randos. So that was probably the only time I've really cringed at myself and be like, oh. I guess with perfectionism, like I definitely, if it doesn't feel right in my heart, like what I've written, I won't finish it. Not that I won't finish it, but I'll come back to it when I'm feeling like I've got the magic that poem needs. Like it could already be written in a way that I really enjoy, but it's just missing that magic. So I won't touch it until I feel it. And sometimes that actually comes from, I do this thing with my TikToks where I post poems that I haven't finished sometimes. I'll be like, oh, here's a few verses from this poem. And then if people say something like, oh, I love that one, blah, blah, blah. Like I wrote this one about karma and I'd written it when I snapped my leg, funnily enough, but I never finished it because I overcame the injury and all this stuff. So I wasn't in that same headspace that I was when I wrote it. So I felt like it wasn't genuine to finish. But it wasn't about my broken leg. It was just about karma. And someone left a comment and they were like, oh man, the karma one's awesome. Can I write this down? And I was like, yeah, sure. Write it down. Just if anyone asks, tell them where to find it. And then I was like, I said to him, I was like, oh, I'll tag you in the one when I finish. So now I feel obliged to finish that one. Maybe that was the magic that it was missing. Like someone being like, oh man, this one's amazing. Like I just looked at it and was like, I'll come back to it.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good that you've taken the initiative of like, oh, it feels like it deserves to be finished or something.
Yeah, for sure. With a lot of the stuff I write, I'll send it to a handful of mates because I don't want to write from my perspective alone. Like I'll send them something and that actually influence a lot of changes. Like sometimes I'll be like, mate, that is horrendous. It was good until then. And I'll be like, what the hell? Why? But it's always interesting to get their opinions because everyone's understanding of life is unique to themselves.
Yeah.
So when I send it to one of my friends and I ask them if it's missing anything, they can give me a pretty detailed response and I'll be like, oh man, I didn't think of that. Like at the moment I've been writing one and it's about a boy who's jealous of how long trees live. So it's like between this little boy and a tree, it's like a conversation between the boy and the tree.
Oh, wow.
And I started asking people, I was like, what is a human experience that you would miss if you weren't human? And I guess I'll ask you that as well. What's a human experience that you would miss if you weren't human? It could be anything. It could be smiling. It could be scratching an itch.
Wow, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Probably eating in the way that we eat.
And that's a great answer.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you were a tree, you'd be jealous if you saw someone working around with a steaming hot pie and like a coffee. You'd be like, oh man, what the hell? I have to have rain all day. Are you kidding me?
I'll get even more specific.
Yeah.
Last night I had a really nice burger that had hot sauce on it and I asked them, hey, that was really good hot sauce. Is there anywhere I can buy that? And they were umming and ahhing saying, oh, I think you used to be able to and you can't anymore. And they sent me home with a cup of the of the hot sauce. I was like, oh, do you want anything for this? They're like, nah. So that's what I'd miss if I was a tree. Yeah.
You'd miss the hot sauce.
Yeah. You got to ask. Yeah.
And I'd been asking all these people because I was like, everyone has something about existence that they would miss compared to someone else. And I was asking people and they were giving me some really unique answers about what they would miss. Like some people were saying, I think I'd be annoyed that I can't face the sun at all times of the day. And then I was like, oh, that's awesome. Someone else saying, if I was an evergreen tree, perhaps I'd be jealous of other trees even when they lose their leaves. They match the season. And I was like, oh, another one. Like they were like, oh, maybe I'll get cold if I drop my leaves and other trees don't. And I was like, oh, so I've just been collecting all these responses. So then when I write this poem and it's about this conversation between the boy and the tree, I have all these different answers and they're all what everyone else thought that they would miss about existence.
Do you often do that in terms of doing a little bit of a vox pop from people saying, just trying to,
so occasionally I'll jump on like a TikTok live and I'll be like, I'll ask the question, like they'll see me writing in my book and then I'll ask them a question. I'll be like, hey, what do you think? What do people think about? I'll be honest with you. I get 3 or 4 answers, but generally those 3 or 4 answers are like people that are interested enough to stay in and just keep pumping out answers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. And I'll ask my friends as well. And I'll ask people that perhaps I haven't spoken to in a while. I'll just be like, off the top of my head, I'll be like, hey, what do you think about this? Do you have an answer for this? And I do that with a fair few of my poems because I want them to be universally sound.
And communal, like
Yeah, for
writing can
sure.
be so isolating sometimes.
100%.
You sit down and it's just you and the page and you go,
Yeah.
well, it's up to me to do all the work and whatever.
Yeah.
But you found like a fun way to bring others in
Yeah,
and it sparks things that you're not necessarily thinking about.
100%.
Love that.
And it worked. The first time I tried it, I was like, oh, I've got to do this more often. It was the poem that I read at the end of Wordcraft, and it was called like "This World's So Beautiful and Not Without You." And the whole poem is about what's more important in life. Is like love more important, or is freedom more important, or do they work hand in hand? And unfortunately, I can't even find the original ending I wrote for that poem, but I sent it to 3 or 4 of my friends, and they were like, mate, that was so good, but this sucks. They're like, what the hell is this part at the end? And I was like, what do you mean, man? And I'd list all my reasons, because originally I think in the poem I pick like freedom over love. And then and all my mates are like, bro, they were like, mate, grow up, this is nonsense. But it was surprising because I think I had just about everyone against me, not in a bad way, but no one seemed to agree.
Interesting.
And then I was asking people as well that would share very different like world ideologies to me. Like their understanding of life is so foreign to me. Like people that perhaps I wouldn't be able to spend that long in a room with because we just can't mesh together nicely. Sure. And I asked those people as well. I'll be like, hey, what do you think about this? And even them would be like, mate, I don't know about this. So I rewrote the whole ending. I just chopped it all out and I rewrote the ending based on what everyone else thought. And I put it together and I posted it on TikTok, and like my sister, my brother's partner, and like a few other people, they were pretty much saying that was like their favorite that I'd written in recent time. They're like, man, I love this one. And then I was like, it made me really rethink as well. And then I understood where they were coming from. It actually changed my opinion as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you looked beyond the immediate circle. You said you reached out to people that you
hadn't spoken to and all stuff like that.
People that are just on the other end of the ideological spectrum or whatever you might want to say.
Yeah.
And you created something really unique from that. I like it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Nick, I'm going to pitch to you the question that I pitch to every guest.
Yeah.
Thank you again for this, John. You go into a slam dinner party. Everyone's trying to bring the main dish, the turkey.
Everyone's trying to bring the main dish.
Yeah.
Wow.
What are you bringing? What kind of dish, what kind of flavour is your work bringing?
Am I still bringing? Is it the main though? Is it like? Am I trying to outshine everyone or?
I don't know, Nick. Are you? Tell me about it.
Oh man, what would I bring to the dinner table? I think it'd have to be something so silly, but people are like, "Oh my god, I
Christmas
haven't had this in
crackers
ages."
with dad jokes.
I was thinking something like Yakults. Like,
oh yeah, I'd go for that.
Yakults or fruit roll-ups or something like what they're like. Why the hell? What the hell?
Fairy bread.
Why did you bring this? But then you those same people, 45 minutes into having a few beers there, you see them going first for the fruit roll-up or they're going first for the Yakult. I think something a bit obscure, but it was a world-class favourite. At some point in your life, you'd look at some other kid's lunchbox and you'd be like, oh man, your mum is way better than mine.
Want to trade?
Yeah, literally.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, something simple. But if I had to put in effort, oh man. No, but Yakults are effort. Like, I still went to Woolworths and I bought them and stuff. But if I was cooking it myself, what am I bringing? Man. Honestly, you can't go wrong with dipping olives and biscuits. Like, just the munches. Like, you just need... When you're feeling peckish, but you've already eaten, but you know what, you're curious about that dip. You're like, yeah, I think I'll try that one.
Yeah, maybe you're in the point of the night where talk's getting a bit real. You're starting to pair off with different people or whatever, and then that kind of stuff comes out and accompanies that as the night goes on. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, I think I bring the item where whether or not you're trying to get out of a conversation with someone or not, they're like, oh, do you want to come? I'm just going to go grab a Yakult. Do you want a Yakult?
Yeah. Cob loaf or something.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just grabbing a fruit. Yeah, you interested in a fruit roll-up? That's what I'm bringing. I'm bringing the conversation mover.
They're so much fun. You can both grab it and just stretch it out. Or, I don't know. It's got like pictures on it or whatever.
Share a Yakult. Maybe you don't feel like a full Yakult.
Yeah.
45 mil is too much.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some people are not big fans, especially like the knockoff brands. They're a little bit funky.
Nah, none of that.
Yeah, we want the real stuff. I think it's
Yeah.
still made in Victoria as well. So
Yeah, I think you can go and get a tour of the factory.
oh yeah, just swim in it. Whatever that
please.
stuff is. When they tell
Don't
me
even
that
tell me.
it's got billions of whatever, obviously I
Bacteria.
can't see that, but I'll
Yeah.
just believe them. I could be drinking nothing. I don't know.
I know, yeah. Whatever the lies you fed me works.
It feels good.
Yeah.
Feels good. Very good. So looking forward now, Nick, what's next for you? Do you just see yourself continuing to develop? Like you talked about going back to finish your studies as well. Yeah.
Honestly, I've learnt this over the years to just live day by day. I'm not trying to plan even what I'm doing in a few months. I think day by day is the way to go. If you can make every day interesting and unique, then you're doing the right thing. If I get an idea tomorrow and I'm like, hey, I'm going to do this today, then I'm going to try and do it. And I try and translate that into like future endeavors as well. Like I've got all these hopes and dreams and stuff that I want to do. I'm definitely going to go back to uni. I'm definitely going to get around to this. But I think if I go day by day, that's when I come across these experiences.
Like the one on the train.
Yeah, like the one on the train, exactly. And that event essentially kickstarted this whole pathway down poetry. So yeah, I'm just a big believer in just day by day. You find something small in your day to be proud of, and it can be something silly. It could be minor as, it could be making your coffee, it could be making your bed, it could be watching the sunrise, it could be watching the sunset. As long as I'm not in a hurry and I like live through the whole day, I'm happy. And I think if I find it difficult when I do that to then not be like, oh, in a few years I want to do this, and I've got these dreams and I've got these ambitions. I take on board all the suggestions I've been given. Like Ren said I should do another competition. Not that I particularly know where to look, but I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard. She said I should compete in like a poetry thing, which I think could be the next step. But I just love writing and hearing people's reactions. That's just my favorite thing ever. And as long as I can continue to keep doing that and keep getting reactions from people, like in any sort of way. I even wrote a poem about getting my first reaction from someone. I never finished it, but like that is just so amazing to me. The first person that it was this lady I was working with, and she's 60 now, and she read this poem that I wrote, and I read it at Wordcraft as well. It was the first one I read. It's called Empty House. It's like about growing up. And she read it and she cried. And I was blown away by that, like in front of me. I gave her a hug and stuff, and I was blown away that my words had so much power that it had brought someone to tears. And that, I don't want to say it was amazing she cried, but like I was just blown away that it made her vulnerable in that sense. And then I was like, oh, this is definitely why I write. So as long as I can keep doing that, I can keep making people smile or making people think differently, then that's all I could ask for.
Yeah. And I like keeping it simple because, you know, our brains are kind of built to try and predict the future, you know, and to try and squirrel away. And, you know, having goals and aspirations is great. But I think equally as important is, looking for what's happening in the present. Because
100%.
I don't know, that's in some ways that's the only thing that's ever really happening. Tomorrow never comes, all that kind of stuff.
And it's funny you say that because I think that took me so long to realize. Like last year in particular, I just like, for some reason, I just have like I've never considered to have like bad mental health or anything like that. There's no way I'd ever claim to have ever been in bad headspaces. But I just started playing footy again, and I just finished a footy game, and for some reason I was just miserable. And despite playing my second footy game that I had played, it had been the second game back since I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I played better than I thought I would. And I was on my way to a mate's 21st, and he was staying in Mansfield for the night in an A-frame house. And I was literally there for the night. I had to leave at 4 a.m. for another thing that I had. I'd played footy in Cranbourne, so I drove there, and it took me like 3 hours. But I ended up making the trip like 45 minutes longer because I enjoyed that drive so much. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself during this drive, I was like, why was I in such a miserable mood, and now I'm like the happiest I've been all week? And I couldn't put my finger on it. I was like, man, what about this drive is making me go the back streets of Mansfield to prolong me getting to my mate's birthday just because I'm enjoying this drive? I was literally just covered in mud in my footy shorts, and I was like, oh. And I was like, I'm just present right now. Like all I'm doing is driving. I'm not worried about the stresses of last week or the stresses of tomorrow or the stresses that might come. I'm just present driving. And then when I realized that that was the happiest I'd been all week, just simply because I was just being present and not thinking about anything else. Because you get so caught up on stuff that doesn't exist yet. You're like, oh my God. And it rips people right out of being present. So after that drive, I just remember I was like, mate, this day forth, it's day by day. And that's what I've been doing.
Wow. A lot of people describe driving, because it is kind of automatic, as quite meditative. Do you know what I mean? So
meditative, yeah.
Especially if you're heading out to the country or whatever.
Yeah, and you just look around the whole time. Your eyes probably should be on the road more than they are. You just want to take in everything that you see around. Like you see a funny looking cow, you're like, man, I want to see that.
Yeah, love it. Nick, if people want to find out more about you or see some of your work, is there somewhere they can head to for that?
Yeah, most definitely. There's a bit on my Instagram, which you can find. It's nick.jenks. Now that's nick.jenx.
Nice. We'll have it in the show notes. Yeah.
But most
it's not
of
Jerker.
It's not Jerker. And then most of my stuff, though, in fact, all of my stuff can be found on TikTok. And it's under Crayon Visuals. Yeah, Crayon Visuals, because that was like the title I was going for when I was like in studying film. Like I was going to start incorporating Crayon Visuals. I think that's originally why I made the TikTok as well. I was going to post like some of the stuff I'd filmed and stuff, but it's been taken over by poetry, and you can find everything there. You'll see all like the little covers of artwork that I do on it, and be able to read all the poems and see all the songs associated with it. And I just started doing like a poetry breakdown as well, where you can read my thought process about writing some of these poems.
Yeah, nice. You can see where it all started, like you said. You put your first one up there, and now you're flying. It's great to see.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Nick. You've got one more piece to share with us today?
I do. And this is one that I wrote. I only finished a few days ago. I posted it on Friday, I think. And I thought back to when I didn't write it about this, but this is what inspired it, I think. I was thinking back to my first memory of writing a poem, and it went back to year 8 English class, and I'd never really enjoyed writing or besides creative writing, but I always struggled with English. Like I just dreaded seeing it on my timesheet, and we got asked to personify something that wasn't human. Like I remember we got asked, and I don't remember what I wrote the poem about, but I thought to myself, like, I'll pick something that's already got human characteristics. So I picked the eye of a storm. And I don't remember what I wrote about. Like I couldn't tell you, but I kept thinking about that. And this past week in particular has been very heavy with the rain. And I just love the rain. Like I love the rain so much. So I used the rain as a metaphor about being comfortable, and how we like the idea of getting wet in the rain, and we'll claim to love the rain, but we'd rather watch it from the comfort of inside. So I use it as a way about, I guess the message of the poem is about taking opportunities when they come despite the world around you suggests. And yeah, it's all a bit about being present as well. And it's called The Storm's Eye Winks Only at Me. The rain. One of the world's most magical experiences. I love the rain. I love it when the rain splits the lights through my window. The world just makes more sense when it patters lightly below. But it's funny, isn't it? How we like the idea of rain, but we hate getting wet, or associate it with pain when we're feeling upset. If you stand in the rain too long, you may get sick. Rather be warm and dry when the only thing promised is that we're sworn to die. Hell-bent on this idea of comfort. But comfort is where our dreams go to die, watching the rain from the luxury of inside. Routine is healthy, but routine is comfort. So someone tell me what kind of balance I once sought, because the world is spinning too fast, in which my existence is threatened, and my life flashes past in what feels like a second. The days feel long, but the years are short. It makes you realize something you've probably thought. To look back on life as a handful of holidays and birthdays, death being the cost of time in which we could be told to pay in the worst ways. So I think I'll stand here in the rain, to feel the gentle drops kiss my face. While everyone else complains their day has become a waste, waiting for the weather to pass, I'll stand here present in my own space, hoping it will forever last. And I'll probably wake up sick.
There's an amazing little payoff there. Isn't it so funny that, some people, we look at the rain and we think, well, I can't do anything until it clears.
Yeah,
and
I
imagine,
know,
like how much of life passes by during that time.
100%.
Yeah.
I thought about it like while playing footy as well. Like you play footy in the rain, and every time it rains when I'm playing footy, I'm like, hell yeah, bring on the rain.
Yeah, it's one of the sports you can still play in the rain, kind of thing, rather than being called off.
I know, but then I was like, oh man, if I was wearing my best kit on my night out and it started raining, I'd be burning. But yeah, so...
Thank you, mate. Thank you for sharing all of those things. Yeah, he's here. He's fresh. He's just fresh off his first feature, and many more to come, I'm sure. Nick Jenkins, thank you so much for dropping by for the chat.
Thank you so much for inviting me and having me a part of this. Like, thrilled.
Yeah. I'll see you at a slam real soon.
100%. Yep.
Weetabix hands, what's that all about?